Hey guys, this is Christina. You're watching Vox and Guest. Do you know the band End? Do you know the band Without the Sky? Do you know the band Under the Yggdrasil? And do you love them? Of course you do. Of course you do. How could you not? And well, you're in luck because they're all here today, and they're all Josh. Hi, Josh. Say hello. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah, I have to say, I don't usually interview three bands at a time, but that's okay. I can probably double it. So I got to get the boring question out of the way first because that's how we do it around here, and then we'll get to the more interesting stuff. So with all these projects, all these offshoots, everything, are you actually just like 15 squirrels in a trench coat, or are you? No, you're not.
No, I have a lot of energy, I guess. Like I previously I was like always really anxious, and then I started kind of trying to put that anxiety into something constructive. I started with art, and then it just ended up being music.
Did you start with fine art, or what kind of art did you do? I mean,
Yeah, I
music art
did.
too, obviously, but was it drawing or was it digital or what, painting? What were you into?
I was doing oil paintings to begin with, and
Oh,
then
wow.
I was the last thing that I was doing was watercolor paintings. It's been kind of a while, but yeah, I did that for a couple of years.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so art and music as a form of therapy and redirection of anxiety back out. Yeah, I could totally I can totally relate to that. So, well, that explains why you're so prolific then. I would say that's a pretty good thing. So as I mentioned, for those of you watching who don't already know Josh and his work, and if you don't already, you're definitely going to want to by the end of this interview. Because you have so much interesting music. And I mean interesting legitimately, not like in the interesting, like euphemistic kind of way. I mean like really interesting because and we're gonna be talking about all this stuff a lot. But you just to frame it up a little bit before we get into some details, you had End, okay, you still technically do, but you've kind of rebranded it as Without the Sky, right? And then that's very much one project. And then you've got Under the Yggdrasil, which is a whole other ball of wax. And then you've got your label too, Rotting Sun Records, which we're going to be talking up a lot as well. So, given all of these different things, let's back up a whole bunch. How did you get into music? How old were you? How long have you been in music? Like, sort of, what's your villain origin story when it comes to music?
Well, I mean, like, I guess technically the first time I started playing music was in middle school with the clarinet.
Oh, me too.
I, I didn't really get very far with that. I didn't like music teachers. I still don't.
Yeah,
um,
teachers are tricky. Yeah, teachers are tricky. They can be great or not great. So, okay, so and you know, clarinet was not going to be your muse, clearly, given where you've gone. So, okay, so you were probably like 12 ish, 11, 12, something like. Okay, okay. So from clarinet, where did you go?
then I kind of picked up the acoustic guitar for a while. I also realized that wasn't for me either, and I think I maybe had two or three lessons, and I just kind of dropped it.
Okay, okay. So, and then at that point, when did you kind of catch fire with something? Like, what was the thing that really lit you up and you went, okay, this is something that even if the teacher sucks or, whatever, like, I don't have to go to lessons. This is the thing that I want to use for my music. What was your main instrument?
So I got like really into metal music when I was probably about, I don't know, 13 or 14.
Oh, okay.
I
Not long
had a
after.
Yeah, I had a friend. She gave me a Cradle of Filth CD,
Okay.
and that
That
just like
seems to be a
totally,
gateway band for a lot of people that I talk to. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it blew my mind. So, really, what I was focusing on through like my teens up until I was maybe 17 was I was trying to learn how to do vocals like that.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
eventually, I ended up meeting a bass player that also kind of wanted to do some kind of metal,
Hmm.
and we formed a band, and just things kind of went from there. I ended up learning drums and bass and guitar through that time, and yeah, it all just kind of, it's even sort of hard to remember when everything happened because it all sort of just, I don't know, it happened really quick.
Well, it sounds like you found it's interesting. It sounds like you found your genre first, and then you learned everything as a matter of necessity for that, which is interesting because a lot of musicians will be like, "Oh, like, my parents brought me drums when I was, in 6th grade or whatever," or, "Oh, I was trying to pick up, chicks or whatever, so I got an acoustic guitar and I." But you were like, "I liked metal and I wanted to do that." And I mean, when we talk about the fact that you were focusing on vocals, I mean, one of the things that I think is so emblematic of your music, at least in your End Without the Sky side of things, your vocals are so raw. Like they're just they have so much emotion in them. First of all, I don't know how you do what you do because you are way the hell up in the rafters all the time. You're not doing the low, growly kind of vocals. You are just screaming your head off, but in this way that's so controlled, but it's also cathartic. Like that's the thing that when I first started listening, I was like, holy shit, how does he do that? So how long did it take you? I mean, I know you said like 13 to 17ish, you were focusing on that, but like, how did you start? I mean, that kind of vocalizing is not just something you open your mouth and do. So like, did you study? Did you watch videos? Like, talk to me about getting into the vocals because they're so impressive.
So I just kind of learned, I learned it myself, just like kind of everything else. It's like it's really not that complicated. Like the best way that I can explain it is like when you start talking really low like this,
Hmm. Hmm.
like when you go into that vocal fry range,
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
you just take that and you put a lot of force behind it, and that's basically how you get those vocals.
But you're doing it in more of a tenor range. So, I mean, I can understand going low and getting that. Like, I can totally, but up here, it's like I can't even try to do that. I sound like, like somebody's choking Mickey Mouse or whatever. But like, you've got all that power. So, I mean, like, did you ever try to sing, like not the prison, but like did you ever try to do, standard singing where, are you in a tenor range when you do that anyway? Is that kind of your vocal wheelhouse, or was this just for what you wanted to build musically? Did you decide you wanted to teach yourself how to scream up high like that?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like that was the part with Cradle of Filth that really got me interested, and what got me more into black metal was that like really high range
Yeah,
instead
yeah,
of the like really low death metal kind of
yeah,
growls and stuff.
yeah.
But when I sing, I kind of have a higher pitched voice too, and I was in
Okay.
choir for a short time when I was in middle school.
I just I have this great image of you like in choir, just like wah, like everyone else is like Rock of Ages, get your wah, like that would be awesome. But okay, so that is kind of more comfortable for you anyway. I mean, and I'm glad that you mentioned actually, the differences because I mean, I'm very upfront about this with everybody that I talk to, who's in the metal community. Like, I am not, a long time die hard metal fan. I am just sort of Alice down the rabbit hole in the last couple months with all of the bands in the indie community that we both, exist in online, and you know, understanding that metal is so many things, that and it's distinct, it's some people will say, the genres don't matter, and I totally get that. Some people are very particular about what genre they're considered, and we'll sit there and get philosophical about like what makes, black metal versus death metal versus speed metal versus what. So but I mean, I think for me the thing, and I'm glad that you said it because I feel like I actually got something right on the metal exam, I think the metal SATs, is that, the vocals are one thing that kind of distinguish that, and so, I mean, so I guess you were specifically drawn to more of the black metal side, even within metal, or do you like other genres too, or is that more your so-so?
I like a lot of different genres, but as far as metal goes, like
Mhm.
black metal is kind of the yeah, that's the kind of metal that I enjoy the most. I like a couple of like older death metal albums, but it
Okay.
just gets too, I don't know, gory and
Okay, I
I
hear
don't
you.
know. It's just too much for me, I guess. And I guess black metal could probably be that way for a lot of
Mm,
people as
mm.
well. So
Yeah, it's all relative, I guess, right? Like it's funny. I go back to bands that I listened to when I was first getting into metal, and they seemed so like wow to me. And then I got into like really deep, black metal, death metal, whatever. And I'm like, and I go back to the other stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is so cozy and whatever. So I guess it really depends on your frame, right? But that's I'm glad that you're honest about that. That you do have a preference, that there is a genre, a subgenre, I guess, that really speaks to you more. So I mean, so once you realized that you could vocalize like this, not like it was just you woke up and you did it, but like once you worked on it and kind of perfected it and started working on it, what was the first thing you wrote? Do we know it? Is it on streaming, or is that hidden away in the bowels of your rooms somewhere? Or how long before you went from, I'm assuming at the beginning maybe you were doing covers, like metal covers, or did you just start with you started with the originals right away? Wow. Okay. So talk to me about that.
so so when I was with my very first band, we were also writing originals, and they were kind of like maybe grungy metal.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I decided during that time that I wanted to basically do a side project of my own that was completely black metal,
Mm,
because I was just getting more and more into it, and I knew that not very many people around me were into it.
mm.
So like the first one of the first songs that I wrote was in 2009, and that song is on my demo. It's called Despair.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Um,
Okay.
the song Shadows Whisper is also roughly that old.
Wow. So
Um,
you have some, well, I don't know, you can't be that old. I'm not asking. But like you definitely have some like OG stuff on there. And I mean and it's interesting because I'm not really cognizant of or I didn't really notice too much massive difference from thing to thing. So I feel like you probably established your style pretty early. Like it seems like you knew who you were musically, you knew what direction you wanted to go into, and so it seems like you didn't even have to evolve. You just were like, this is what I'm doing. And we're starting right now and we're doing it. So I mean, were you happy with the original side project? Like how long did you stick with the grunge metal? Did you pull anybody from that, or have you just kind of always been a one man show really when it comes to black metal?
yeah, I mean, as far as when it comes to black metal, there was a period of time, and some of it really does have to do with this town. Like, I live in a really small town, and what's
Yeah,
most popular is kind of just like your bar rock or country or,
sure.
that kind of stuff. There's a couple of metal bands, but they're, you know, considerably tamer than what I have going on.
Okay.
Um,
So there just wasn't much of a scene for you to pull from any. I hear that a lot too. People are like, yeah, if I wanted to find a musician to collaborate with, I'd be driving for like hours and it's just not feasible. So, okay.
there was one point in time where I had a friend that was working with me on like just a, it was just two of us kind of working on things for a short period. And then about 6 months ago, I met a guy that lived here for a while, and I was going to release my first tape, which would have been Misery Eternal on his
Yeah.
label, but he ended up moving to Virginia. But
Ah,
yeah, those are the only two connections that I've made in this town for black metal.
wow. Okay. And that's like over a period of years and years. So obviously,
About
okay. So
15.
okay, so out of necessity, then you're just, you're the whole show. So I mean, so okay, so talk to me about, and again, I almost feel like we have three different interviews to do, because and I love that about you, Josh, that you're musically so versatile, and then you've also got this cool project with the label, and but so let's start, because I imagine you started with the End Without the Sky project. So when you're working on, and I mean, the latest release, Misery Eternal, and that album. So, well, you might not know, but when I'm prep for these interviews, I listen to everything. Like I listen, if it's on Spotify or whatever, and an artist has done it, I listen to it. So like I've heard everything at this point, and like I got very into Misery Eternal because one of the things that I think is so interesting, and I mean, maybe this is going to seem like it's revelatory to me because I don't know that much about black metal or whatever, but one of the things that, that I noticed listening to Without the Sky and End, that was different from a lot of the metal that I've been listening to, even bands that consider themselves or call themselves black metal, is that, to me at least, your music has a lot of rock elements to it, instrumentation wise, and not in a way that doesn't sound right. It doesn't not sound metal, but it gave me, a common language that I could start with, because I play a lot of rock, I listen to a lot of rock, and then you put your vocals on it, and it's like, okay, this is definitely not rock. But I mean, is that am I right about that? First of all, is that just my weird mirror that I'm getting it from? And like, kind of, how did you decide? Is that sort of a thing of black metal that I'm not familiar with, or is that kind of? I feel like that's you, not
Yeah,
genre. Okay,
yeah, it's definitely kind of a me thing.
cool.
Like I don't really say it out loud very often, but like there are some very deep influences from like post-hardcore, from punk, and from shoegaze music. So
So, I'm
yeah,
sorry,
it's
from
not
whose music?
shoegaze music.
Oh,
It's just
shoegaze music.
another
Okay, I thought you
form of
said something
music.
French, and I was like, oh, I don't know who Chevier is, but okay, shoegaze, yes. Okay, yeah, yeah. So you don't say that out loud too much, but there are those influences for you, and so you're mindful of that when you start building a song, because I feel like it is building. Your stuff is really complex, and there are just so many layers. So talk me through that, like when you're writing as Without the Sky or End, what's your process? Do you start with your lyrics? Do you start with bass line? Does it depend on the song? Kind of, what's your songwriting journey? I hate that word, but I've used it, so there we go.
It definitely depends on the song, but in
Okay.
general, at least most recently, I kind of start with a drum track, and I do, for the most part, play most of my drums. Like
Mm,
Misery Eternal, there was kind of a lot of loops of my playing in it, but after I get the drum track ready, I'll start just putting in guitars, and normally it starts out like really really simple guitars.
mm,
And what I do is I basically build like patterns within patterns with the layers to make it
yes.
sound like there's a lot more going on than there really is. Because like each of the maybe like 6 or 7 layers is really me only playing like 2 or 3 notes at a time.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's
It
really,
does
really.
not sound that way, I'll tell you. It really doesn't. So what you're doing is working because it sounds like this puzzle. So okay, so you're it's really more about how you're arranging it that gives it all that. Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm really not like a super great guitar player, but I've learned basically how, I don't know, how to work with that.
Okay. Yeah, so many metal musicians specifically say that, like, oh, I'm just sort of a so-so drummer, or I'm a so-so guitar player. And I'm like, I so-so don't agree with you, but okay. But so okay, so you, like, lately at least, you've mostly been starting with drums. So do you is that where your ideas begin, that you just kind of, you have a rhythm in your head, a tempo in your head, a beat in your head that you want to build on, or do you have more of the rest of the instrumentation kind of in mind when you sit down? And at what points do the lyrics come in to the picture?
So I definitely do have like an idea of what I want the melody to be like, and
Okay.
sometimes I'll even like have the melody pre-prepared and try to find the tempo to make the drums to.
Oh, okay.
So it really depends. And like a couple of the newer songs that I haven't released yet, I actually started from a synth line, and then I played drums to the synth line, and then did the guitars.
Oh, that's cool.
The vocals are almost always last, and a lot of times they're like really spontaneous. The
Hmm.
like so for Misery Eternal, I don't think I did more than 3 takes on any of the vocals.
Really?
Yeah, I wanted it to be like as raw as possible and
It
as
is.
like imperfect. I didn't want it to be just like, because I was really trying to let go of a lot of frustration and
Mm.
anger at the time, and
Mm.
I feel like that's what makes it to where you can kind of still feel that emotion.
I 1,000%. That's a better way of saying what I was trying to articulate earlier, which is that the vocals, and I'm going to be completely honest, usually for me, if I have trouble listening to metal, it's relative to the vocals because I'm used to, I'm in a cover band. So, like I'm used to singing melodies that are very specific and not vocalized in that way. And so, when I start listening to something, I always end up listening for vocals first. And your everything on Misery Eternal, I mean, even just from the like, so okay, so it opens for anybody who hasn't heard it, and for those of you who have, like it starts with the human disease, right? So, and that is just, there's like a drone basically, and you are just screaming your head off. And it is so raw and it is so intense, and it got me, like I really was like, okay, this guy has something to say and he's feeling a lot, and it is just baked into the music, and so then, you know then the Rotting Sun comes in, like, that's got everything, all the bells and whistles, right? But and again, a lot of, for me, that kind of rock feel underneath it, and some punk, as you said, but like I completely, what you intended to do with the vocals by keeping it pure, really, that it, and I mean, is there is such a thing as perfect black metal vocals? Like, I mean, like, I don't feel like, and I don't mean that as a slight, like, oh, they're not good. I just mean like, given what you're doing and what you're communicating and how you're communicating it, like, you're not going to be like, oh, well, I was slightly flat on that scream. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's
Yeah.
more about it. Does it is it a vessel for the emotion that you're expressing, right? And so, I mean, I can imagine the more you did that, it would be like, by the end, by like take 40 or whatever, you'd be like, all right, fine, I'm just gonna. So I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate that but I'm also impressed that you got them down that fast and that they work so well. I mean, so how long did the album take to do, Misery Eternal, from start to finish? Since you seem like you build, I mean, it sounds like it goes pretty quickly to me, but probably doesn't feel that way to you.
Yeah, I mean, Misery Eternal probably from start to finish maybe only took me 6 weeks, like
Wow, that's
total,
even
and that
faster
was
than I thought. Wow, 6 weeks.
yeah. I think I had 3 of the songs prepared. I basically had 2 EPs,
Mm,
and they were somewhat connected, but not really. And I took some of the songs and just trashed them, and some of the
mm,
songs that fit together right went on to Misery Eternal. And
mm,
then I
mm,
think it was Drowning in Despair was the last song that I wrote, so that it could be considered an album. So it had
mm,
7 tracks.
mm. 6 weeks. That's very impressive. I mean, and you do all your own production too?
Yeah, I pretty much do all of my own production. In the case of Misery Eternal, I did have my buddy that I talked about earlier that had the
Yeah,
tape label.
right.
He did kind of the mastering. He just like re-EQ'd it and
Mm.
kind of set it at the right volumes and stuff. But most of that is pretty much how it sounds.
That's you. Wow. Okay. So why don't we play right now? We'll get to it. I always get so caught up in conversations that a lot of times I'll play the song like in the last 10 minutes of the show. And I'm like, geez, I should probably front load it a little bit. So why don't we play The Rotting Sun? Do you want to intro this a little bit, talk a little bit about, because I know when you and I were speaking, Earlier you mentioned that you feel like that song really kind of sums you up. So what how did that how do you feel that way?
I don't even really know how to explain it. I think like it in the way that it sounds, it's kind of like the it sounds a lot like all of my other songs. You know, if you take a song like Brother, it sounds a little bit different than the rest of it.
Hmm.
I also think like it's a very it's kind of a vague song, but it definitely expresses the way I feel about the world and how it's kind of just going to crap.
Yeah, yeah. But when you say vague, you mean lyrically?
Yeah, lyrically, it's not necessarily super obvious what I'm talking about.
It's not ultra specific. Yeah, but I think that works too because people can bring to that whatever they want to bring to it, and certainly the world just going to crap is one of the things that they can bring to it. So okay, so this again, this is on Misery Eternal. This is The Rotting Sun. Let's roll it. Okay. So I want to step aside from Without the Sky and Misery Eternal a little bit, and I want to get to another project of yours. We're going to come back. We're going to keep going back and forth, but I feel like we can have a more a more in-depth conversation if we've addressed a little bit of everything that you're doing kind of up front, and then we can go back and pull pieces, because obviously they're all parts of you and representative of you. But for those of you paying attention, you're noticing the merch here. I'm repping under the Yggdrasil. That's a Norse. Yeah, you got Isaac Venin on there. We're throwing it all out there. But I mean, that's a Norse tree, right? Like the Yggdrasil. Do you want to talk a little bit about that before we even get into the project, or like why you specifically went with that as your? Because it's kind of a loaded, not in a bad way, but there's a lot of mythology behind it. There's a lot of meaning behind it. So just so people understand where the name of the band came from, if you want to get into that a little bit.
So it's I hate to admit this, but yeah, I don't really know too terribly much
Oh, okay.
about the Yggdrasil, but I do know that it's the tree of life in Norse
Mm-hmm.
mythology.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stepped across the word when I was really studying just other cultures and kind of the occult and stuff like that. I was raised really Christian, and I didn't
Seem
really
to have veered a little bit afield from that.
yeah,
Okay.
I kind of I had to check things out for myself to figure out how
Sure.
how I wanted to live my life. But yeah, I wanted to kind of convey something magical, and I guess another point with Under the Yggdrasil is it's actually the name of what my original black metal band was when it was a duo.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so a lot of Norse mythology is referenced in black metal, so it seemed like a
Mm-hmm.
really good name for a black metal band. But
Yeah, yeah,
I wanted to reuse it because Ind wasn't like it's really hard to find on the internet.
yeah. Even with
When
the
you go search,
period, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is tricky. Although I guess, well, I was going to say it pops up for me right away, but I listen to you a lot, so I think my algorithm is different from most people. So yeah, I mean, Under the Yggdrasil is definitely a more specific and probably not so common name, I imagine. So okay, so you also wanted something that you could Google easily and people wouldn't have to be like, wait, is this the right end? Or yeah, it's okay. So I dig that you were upfront about that you're not like, well, when I got my doctorate in Norse mythology, I was the yeah, but
nothing like that. No.
no, we could just pretend. I'll just start calling you Dr. Josh. But no, and it is an interesting, and again, I mean interesting. Well, an interesting name for the project too, because it's a different, very very different project for you, at least relative to End and Without the Sky. So, I mean that this is more of an ambient project, right? I mean, Under the Yggdrasil. So talk a little bit about, I almost feel like we should play something from that, and actually maybe we should in a bit, but talk about how you got from that side of you musically for End and Without the Sky over to Under the Yggdrasil, which was like, I put it on the first time and I was like, okay, wait, I love this. This is still Josh, so roll everybody into that a little bit, because I know it's a newer project for you too.
So basically, what it is there's a genre called dungeon synth, and it's basically like an offshoot of black metal where in the 90s, black metal used to use a lot of these like synthesized intros and
Mm,
stuff.
mm,
And for a long time, I really thought dungeon synth was just super corny. So what I was doing with Under the Yggdrasil was I was trying to make it like what I thought dungeon synth should sound like,
should
something
sound like,
that's
oh, cool.
kind of terrifying in its own
Mm,
way, but also kind of pretty.
yeah. Okay. Oh, that's cool. So it's almost like when you go see a movie that has a great plot, and you're like, this movie's going to be great, and it sucks, but you're like, damn it, if somebody remade that movie, it would be great. You kind of just did that with a whole genre. So okay, so yeah, I'm dungeon synth is these the first time I'm hearing these two words put together. So thank you for the education there. But so I really found it. It is moody, it is atmospheric, it is I kept thinking it would make like a great and I hope you don't take this as an offense, because I mean this as a sincere compliment, like a great video game soundtrack or like a movie soundtrack, because it's got so much portent in it, and it's orchestral, it's obviously synth, but it does have that dark, brooding, kind of ominous quality to it. So I mean, how do you, relative to how you are used to building your songs, how do you start one for Under the Yggdrasil? Because I can't really tell whether, like, do you have like a refrain that comes first? Do you have a mood that you want? Is it all kind of, I mean, is it the same kind of process for you, or how do you go about building any of those songs?
It's kind of honestly really similar. I'll start with a very like simple pattern and just continue to build
Hmm.
on it. And a lot of
Hmm.
times I'll try to, like stretch it out so it builds as it goes
Hmm.
instead of like all on top of each other.
Yeah.
Um, and then a lot of times like the mood comes from some of the stuff that's underneath it, like the droning and stuff.
Mm.
I sometimes add that in afterwards. Sometimes I add it in before. It's kind of like Under the Yggdrasil is sort of my whatever project. Like
Okay.
I can make music for Under the Yggdrasil. Like let's see, I think at this point I have 2 albums and 4 EPs or something like that for Under the Yggdrasil,
Mm.
and it's only been a project for 4 months. So
Right.
um,
It's clearly, I mean, as fast as Misery Eternal was at 6 weeks, you seem to be cranking it out a lot more quickly. And I mean, is that also, I mean, when we talk about Without the Sky and End, and you're talking about that as kind of a cathartic release, how what are the emotions for you that go into Under the Yggdrasil? Because while it is ominous, while it is dark, it is also very calming. I think some of it is because the patterns are cyclical, and because you are, they'll be like a river of light, right? And you've got this very kind of mystical refrain that just keeps going, and you've got 32 bars or whatever of that before the next counter melody comes in, and it is it's almost hypnotic, and I mentioned A River of Light because I, on the Wandering Priest, Insect Priest EP, which we'll talk about a little bit more too, that I think that's my favorite. It almost sounds to me a little bit like if somebody took the Carol of the Bells and put it in reverse, because it's this very beautiful thing, but it's also there's definitely a mood to it, that is not like, oh, and I, so I mean, what part of you is Under the Yggdrasil expressing? Is the same kind of imbued with the same kind of level of emotion, or is it like when you say your whatever project, is it just sort of these are the things that come into my brain and I'm putting them out, like, and it's not necessarily as personal or emotional?
I, I would kind of say that, yeah, that's somewhat the case. Really, what's kind of bizarre is the way that I started this project was I was having a really hard time sleeping,
Hmm.
and
Right, I remember this. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I basically would just, when I couldn't sleep, I'd wake up and mess with my synth until I fell asleep. So a
Hmm.
lot of these like hypnotic patterns are that way because I wrote a lot of this music so that I could sleep.
Try to sleep. Yeah, yeah. No, I remembered you had. I think you said that on Facebook like a month or so ago, and I was just like, okay, that's interesting, and I get it. Like I hear it. I hear where um, it is soothing in that way. And I think repetition like that in general tends to be soothing unless it's something really intense that's being repeated. But I mean, so it's interesting. It's interesting to me that it's not only different sonically, but it's also different emotionally for you. This seems to be much more of a sound project, really, than, I mean, obviously there are no lyrics, and so you're not expressing in that way. But I mean, it's but you, I mean, do you still feel like you're getting something that you want to say out there, or is it really just more about like, I really like how these riffs sound together. I like how these bells sound together. I like how this refrain sounds together. I like sticking the drone in there. Like what kind of, where is it for you in terms of like, I guess this is less personal than without the end and without the sky and end, but you know, what are you getting out of doing it this way besides sleeping better, I hope?
Yeah, actually I have been sleeping a lot better, but
Okay, that's good. So anybody who is having trouble sleeping, if for nothing else, go pick up the Whispering Insect Priest and you can sleep better. That will help you.
might
So
be able to.
yeah.
um I think a lot of what I get out of it too is just like fun. um
Mm.
I like synthesizers are something that I just recently picked up. Like as soon as I actually I started under the Yggdrasil before I actually had my first hardware synthesizer, but
Hmm.
um, I don't know. It's kind of something that's always interested me, but I never had the money to go out and buy a synthesizer because
Yeah.
they're not really super cheap.
No, not the good ones at
Um,
least. Yeah. You're sitting there with your Casio playing Axel F or whatever.
yeah, and I don't know. I just wanted like a new instrument because
Mm,
I've honestly like sometimes I get sick of my guitar or sick of playing drums or
mm,
sick of bringing up old stuff that ends up in an end or without the sky songs.
hmm.
Like I said, a lot of that stuff is like really personal,
Yeah.
and it's me letting it go. But at the same time, sometimes bringing that stuff up is a little bit hard.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think so. Tell the story of this EP. You know, this insect priest. You know, like, is there a? Do you have kind of a narrative in mind for that? Is it just a cool name that you came up with, or how did you come up with the title and sort of what's the if there is a story behind it, what is it?
Yeah, there kind of is a story behind it. So there's this. I'm gonna get super nerdy here for a minute,
Good.
but
I love it. I'm a nerd, so I will nerd out with you. Go for it. Rock out with your
there,
nerd out. Go for it.
there's this anime. It's called Mushishi. It's about a man who travels around and he's dealing with these like paranormal uh, creatures that do various things to people, cause them to be deaf or blind, certain just like, and it's kind of a very like calming, but at the same time terrifying show to watch. Um,
Okay, calming and terrifying are not
which
two words that you tend to hear together, but
no, not
okay.
really, but I mean that is kind of the atmosphere
Mm,
of under
mm,
under the Yggdrasil to a certain extent. But the I guess the way I came up with the title is that Mushi basically means insect in Japanese.
okay.
Um, so I mean, it's just a reference, and most of the titles are actually references to that show, although it doesn't really have a particular like
Like story,
storyline.
right, or through line. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, it's wandering in itself, so that's okay. You're
Yeah,
sort of
no, I wanted to kind of like so Dungeon Synth has this tendency to rely on like fantasy kind of for storyline,
mm, mm.
but a lot of it goes into like Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. That's a really big like black metal trope for some reason. But
I don't
I
think I
wanted,
knew that. Really?
yeah, it's pretty big. Um,
Okay. Wow.
I mean,
All right.
even like Led Zeppelin. So I mean, yeah, it just metal in general is super
Mm.
nerdy about Lord of the Rings.
Okay. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. I'm a little surprised to hear that because I don't think anyone's told me that before. So okay, so you wanted to do something that wasn't Tolkien. You wanted to de-Bilbo the whole thing, and so okay, so then this anime just sort of lit up your brain. And what kind of came first there? Was it, did you watch the show for a while and then go, hey, with this sleep project that I'm putting together, I think this would be a cool kind of, at least a guide, if not a storyline? Or did you stumble onto the show after you were already building? I imagine you saw the show first.
Yeah, I actually did see that. Like I found the show like a couple of years ago.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah. So,
and I've just been like watching it. Like it's a pretty short series. It's like 24 episodes, but I
Mhm.
watch it every once in a while. And yeah, it's something that I've also used to fall asleep. It's got that kind of like calm,
Mm.
meditative.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and that's kind of hard to explain. There's just elements of horror in it. I mean,
Mm.
it's
Well, I mean, how many housewives do you hear about who like watch these true crime shows about like people murdering, single women or whatever, and then they fall asleep to that? Like, I think, that you can probably find comfort in anything if you're, tweaked in a certain way, I guess. But I mean, I'm wondering if some of why things that are vaguely horrific or terrifying is calming to you is because it's connecting with the part of you that you process through your music. I mean, like, when you talk about trying to redirect anxiety, I often wonder with metal in general and, black metal and death metal specifically, I think, because, I think the stereotype is that people who make that music must just be running around just hacking up puppies, and they're like these horrible, angry, volatile people. And it's so funny because I mean I've talked to so many metal musicians over the last couple of months, and to a person they're just like the nicest, kindest, like you're super chill. You may not feel that way, but you you read that way. And I do sort of have this hypothesis that metal is really an outlet for intense emotion that isn't always going to be pretty, and it isn't always going to be smooth, and it isn't always going to help you sleep. So I wonder if that element in there is almost sort of grounding for you. Is that possible, or am I just talking out of my ass?
no, I mean, I think you have some solid points there.
Thank you.
I think there's
Every once in a
always
while.
this like looming anxiety that I constantly deal with, and
Mm.
so yeah, like having an element of horror, like um, I don't know, yeah, it seems like it calms my anxiety because
Mm.
I'm always waiting for like the next thing to happen. But if it's already happening, I'm generally fine.
Right? Isn't that the weirdest thing about anxiety? The anticipatory part of it is the worst. And then the crisis almost feels like, oh, I know how to do
Easy.
this. I'm comfortable. Yeah. And then you're in it, and you're in like, emergency room mode, just like I'm gonna tackle this and handle it. And then it's all done and it's like, holy shit. And then it all comes back. So yeah, I completely understand. And I think that again, where metal isn't necessarily a genre or a series of subgenres that I would ordinarily gravitate towards, through this show and just, having become friends with so many musicians who are in metal, I do find the psychology of it fascinating, and I mean, what amused me was that, in digging in a little bit, there are like actively universities and like research groups that are studying metal. They're doing like brain scans on people when they listen to it, and they're, measuring responses of fans and non-fans and what parts of their brain light up. And something I discussed, I think with Shovel Monster, was the idea of the paradox of experiencing positive feelings in reaction to a lot of negative energy or emotion. And I think, in a very different way, in a kind of more quiet, pensive way, I see that with you and in your music, that, that there's this sense that, and I don't know if it's about trying to control the uncontrollable a little bit, and if you're creating the horror, then at least you have a hand in it. So it gives you a sense of, okay, here's where we are in the movie, like this is what's coming next. But I mean, do you feel like you're you're picking apart different pieces of that, even with Under the Yggdrasil, whereas I know that you've said, and I don't want to, to plop meaning onto it that you don't have. But I mean, I'm just wondering, even if subconsciously, because, it sounds like dungeon synth is it, because if you're telling me it is sort of an offshoot of black metal, it's got to have some of that gravitas to it, right? It's got to have some of that meaning. So, I mean, do you feel like maybe this is a different, Under the Yggdrasil is like a different side of that coin? Or is it really, truly just am kind of fucking around and I love the way this sounds and I'm going to layer these? I don't know. I mean, like, I guess if it helps you sleep, I'm wondering if that's just because it's ambient and it's kind of calming, or if maybe there's some part of it of yourself that you're putting into it that you don't even necessarily realize. I don't know if there was a question in there, Josh, but if there was, feel free to answer it.
I'm sure that's probably the case, and that I'm just kind of, because obviously, like, I feel compelled to make that music, and a lot of times really quickly. And I mean, I think the Wandering Insect Priest was like 2 days or something that it took me to put it together. So.
Are you kidding me?
No.
2 days. Okay. Okay. I mean, I know it's like 5 songs or whatever, but still, like, I mean, that's that's very quick. So and that wasn't stuff that you had planned out already, or was, okay, so you just, from having nothing to having a finished album, it was 2 days.
Yeah, something.
You're gonna make other people really angry, Josh, with these labors of love, and they're like, damn it, he put out the whole fucking thing in 2 days or whatever. So was it just like a fever dream? Were you just like possessed to do it? Or I mean, like, I don't know. How did you do that in 2 days?
I don't know. I mean, it's really actually not really super complicated. Like, the music itself isn't. There's only like 4 tracks of synth. I mean, that's kind of around the time that it takes me to make an Under the Yggdrasil song, is like 4 or 5 hours.
Okay.
So if I'm really just sitting down and trying to make something, yeah, that's about the time frame. I think A Senseless Existence took me like 3 or 4 weeks, and I was going slow on that one.
So you're so nonchalant, you're just very like, oh, it's not I mean, I understand what you're saying. It doesn't have the, I mean, I think the spareness of the songs is part of what I like about it, though. It's because there's a difference between stuff that isn't complicated and stuff that isn't complex. And I do think because you're building a lot of mood and a lot of atmosphere and a lot of ambiance in with not that many elements, to me, it's almost like when you cook and you have a dish that only has like 5 ingredients, they better be really good, because you're going to taste every single one of them in 3D. And so, like, for this, there's really nowhere to hide in music like this, and so I'm surprised, even though you could say, okay, well, yes, from a technical standpoint, obviously, especially, compared to what you do with Without the Sky and End, there's, although it does sound like it's similar in ways, like you said, you'll take something and you'll kind of repeat it, loop it, stagger it, kind of build it in that way. You're not really doing that with Under the Yggdrasil, because it is more spare. It is, everything is more distinct, I think. But I don't know. I guess I'm impressed that you managed to put out something that has so much depth in it, to me, so fast, without feeling like you came into it with some big emotional anchor either. It's like, I guess that's why and maybe it really is just a matter of like, this is a case where the listener is Rorschaching all this stuff onto your music that you didn't even necessarily intend, but you seem like a deep guy, you seem like a thoughtful guy. And I find it kind of hard to believe that maybe you've just managed to do that more economically and efficiently, here. Not that you were slogging away on Misery Eternal. I mean, that's not like that took you years or whatever, or even months, plural. But I mean, it's, I just, okay, I'm impressed. I think that's cool. So, okay. So, yeah, no, I mean, I really, I wish I could remember it. There's this video game. Um, oh God, it's is it oh my God, what's the thing you get trapped in that you can't get out of that starts with an O? It's not obelisk. What is it? It's help me, Josh.
I guess I
So
don't know it.
oubliette. No, it's not called the oubliette. There's a video game that came out a long time ago, and it's got this character named Ida. I feel like it's Danish or something, and everything. It's very spare visually, but it's got this really cool vibe. And I don't remember what the name of it is, so this is super helpful, I'm sure, to everybody watching and you. But it that was the thing that popped into my head when I started listening to the Wandering Insect Priest. It was like, oh my God, this would make a great soundtrack for that, because the whole thing with video games like that, or even movies like that where isn't a lot of speaking, is that the music will give you it colors in so much, for the person who's playing the game or watching the movie or whatever. And like I kept thinking, like, wow, this would go really well. I mean, do you ever think about using something like one of your Under the Yggdrasil projects to score something somewhere, like a short film or a video game or anything?
So I can't really necessarily say too terribly much about this because it's not like fully
I've
confirmed. But yeah,
stumbled
in
on
fact,
something.
uh, creeping closer to the light is supposed to be on a web series here pretty soon. So somebody
Oh,
else.
that's so cool. Okay, all right. I won't ask.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you. I don't want to. I didn't know. But that makes a lot of sense to me. Oh, that's very cool. Will you, once you are at liberty to share that, will you let me know
Oh
what to
yeah,
watch out for?
as soon
No,
as I
you're
know
probably not
what's
going to
going
promote it
on.
at all.
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just gonna
You're just
act
going to
like
let
it
it
didn't
quietly
happen.
go. You're not going to tell anybody that you've done this very cool thing. So, is it something that's kind of imminent, or is it just early stages, or you can't even talk about that?
I would say it's pretty imminent. Like I'm in contact with the creator of the web series, and we've talked several times. So
Okay.
I
Oh,
think
that's
it's
very cool.
pretty for sure. I just don't want to say anything, and like
Sure.
um, if he's got something going on that I don't know about.
Right. No, very professional. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, everyone will have to keep their eyes out for that too, for the non-announcement that, Josh he won't tell anybody, and I'll find out and I'll let everybody know. I'll be sure to do that. So, okay. So we've talked a bit about Without the Sky and End. We've talked a bit about Under the Yggdrasil. Talk to me about Rotting Sun Records. How did you decide to, okay, I don't have enough going on, I think I'll also have a label. And your label is what it does specifically is very cool. So I really want you to talk about that, because you've got a really cool concept and a really cool process with that.
So yeah, I met a buddy when I first started. It was like right after I cut the end demo, and he owned a cassette label here in town, and he was originally going to release my album on his label, but he ended up moving,
Right,
and it was just
Virginia.
kind of and he basically just kind of was like, dude, it's not that hard. Like, this is what you need. This is how I do it. This is where I order my stuff from.
Hmm.
And so originally I built Rotting Sun Records just to be like a place for Under the Yggdrasil and End to be in the same place, so I didn't have to upload to 10,000 different places.
Right. Totally get that.
And obviously I wanted to start making tapes too. It's kind of a black metal thing, I guess, to do tapes, and I've always wanted to release my music on tape.
It's just so cool. I mean, there's something so punk about that too, to me, that you're taking a technology that, most people are like, wait, what? And you're bringing it back and making it really cool. So, I mean, like, so how in terms of like artwork and production, like, how are you doing everything on your own? Or you sort of sending things out? People are, what's the process there for like, okay, I want to put the Wandering Insect Priest on a tape. What happens?
I put it on a tape. Here, right here.
You're like, that's
Yeah,
it. It's done.
actually, let's see.
Okay.
I think I have one right here.
Oh,
Yeah,
move it over a little bit. There we
this is
go.
the second part. Actually, I just finished this. It'll be out on the 28th.
Ooh, sneak peek. Okay. So thanks, Josh. That was great. As an interviewer, you're making my life really easy. You're like, I put it on a tape. Thank you very much. But okay, so but I mean, in terms of the artwork, in terms of like, packaging it or whatever, like, sales, I mean, like this is to have a label where you're making things, I mean, even if just like, if it's like any kind of merch or whatever, that's a bit of an undertaking. So, I mean, do you want to give me anything
Yeah.
anything more about that, or should I just go sit in the corner with my thumb?
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of the art, at least for my own releases, I do it all myself. They're either photographs or like recently I've been using AI art for some of the, um, partially because I've met some really shady artists recently and I don't want to work with them. So,
Oh, yikes! Yeah, I don't blame me.
some of it is like, so, I've had a couple of new projects join the label. So like Greg
Big
Filth
filth. Yeah,
is
yeah.
one of the major ones, and then I have Mark Williams
Right.
Exoplanet. Um, I
And
did some
that's
stuff.
Mark from Isaac of Enon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark from.
And then is God I Am on your label, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, I mean, basically, he's definitely a part of like the team and stuff. He's definitely kind of his own. He kind of plays by his own rules.
Yes, I get that sense.
But yeah, he's a super cool guy, and like I did a good run of his tapes, and been trying to do what I can to kind of help him get out a little bit more too. And honestly, like Rotting Sun Records right now is just like four of us trying to help each other get like into a bigger space with the black metal thing. So
yeah. Well, but I mean, I imagine that's how a lot of labels start, right? I mean, you've got kind of this ground, swell grassroots thing, and you build from there. So, I mean, is that, how big do you want it to get? Do you want to have a ton of artists that are on your label? Do you just kind of want it to be whatever it is? Are you just sort of seeing where it goes at this point? Do you have a plan? Or not?
I mean, I kind of definitely like I do have a plan. I'm really trying to work mostly with like really different like raw projects, whether they be like black metal or like God I Am is doom. But I'm trying to find music that's somewhat similar to my own. Like it has that same kind of feeling to it. I've actually had this like want to have a record label for years and years, and this is just like, it's really cool for me actually.
Now you're doing it. Yeah. So when did you realize you wanted to do that, and kind of what was the main impetus behind that? Was it just having, I would say having more creative control, but I mean, you have total creative control over your own music at least. So is it more about, finding like-minded musicians, even if it's not exactly the same thing, or is it just kind of, trying to support the genre? Like what turned you on about the idea of having a label?
It's kind of a little bit of both, I can excuse me, I lost my thought there for a second.
That's okay. Yeah, the idea of just what made you want to have a record, like, because you said this is something you've been wanting for a while. So, like, when did that occur to you? Like, why a label?
Don't even really necessarily remember specifically when it was. Maybe in the last 5-6 years or so.
Okay.
But I've just gotten really like disillusioned with this particular town because there's no kind of like underground metal scene. Initially I thought about like, what can I do here in town? Could I run a record label here? Would that attract more people here? But
right,
obviously that's not that's going to cost a lot in investment, whereas like this doesn't really cost me very much. And I've met some really, really cool artists, and they may be like halfway across the country or whatever, but it's
Yeah.
still really cool.
So you, I mean, are you actively recruiting for your label? Is it kind of like, do people find you? Are you listening out for bands and going, this is somebody that seems like they're on my say wavelength, and this is somebody that I really want to work with? Is it both? Like, how did you end up, connecting with Greg Filth and Mark?
So
How did that
so
happen?
Jack from Greg Filth, just I think it was when you mentioned me in a post. I think it was when you hit 2,300 or 2,200 followers. I don't remember.
I don't know. I shout out a
Um,
lot of people. So that's the
yeah,
only reason to do those posts is like, okay, yeah, we got this number, but hey, go follow these people. So okay. So Jack, okay.
so it
Found you.
blew up really big at that time. I had God I Am hit me up during that time. Jack hit me up during that time, and he pretty much was just like, "Hey, man, do you want to like work together? Let's try to,
Mm,
figure out how to get our music out there." And so I
that's
honestly
awesome.
kind of just look at him as a label partner at this point in time more than anything else.
Oh, okay.
Uh, with Mark, I kind of was just like, we talked quite a bit, me and Mark.
I could see that.
And I
Super nice
asked
guy.
him one day if he would be, or I basically just said, if you ever want to put the Exoplanet uh, album out, like I'd be totally willing to do it. And he
Do
just
that,
kind
yeah.
of was like, yeah, dude, do it. Um, I have another artist that I can't really say anything about him yet, but
Okay.
another black metal artist that in this case I approached him.
Okay.
Um, but that was kind of the only time I've really done it. I just connect with his music a lot, so
Mm.
it felt
Hmm.
right.
So that okay, and then so at that point, your process is what? People will go on the website, they'll order something, and then I guess you make it like to order, or do you just have a bunch of things sitting around that you've prepared, or
Most of my
how's it
stuff is
structured?
most of my stuff is like mostly pre-prepared. So like
Okay.
if the run is like 10 tapes, I'll do like one run of five, and then I'll do five later. But
Okay.
pretty much I always have just like they can go out like that.
Right on hand. Yeah. No, that's smart. So, but okay. So it sounds like you do want to grow it, but thoughtfully.
Yes,
You're not
exactly.
looking to just collect a bunch of people to have more people on the label. You're really cherry picking, artists that have meaning to you, where the music connects. And that's really interesting. I mean, and again, not surprising to me because you seem to do everything quite thoughtfully, but that you've seen you know a a gap in what you're looking for. Nobody's doing what you're doing near you, and I don't know how many people are doing it in general, but you've got this idea. And I mean, it's and the label, you didn't start that all that long ago, right? It's still fairly new.
Yeah, I started it in about February of this year.
Okay. Yeah, I think you were, and it's funny because I remember the first time that I interacted with Rotting Sun Records on Facebook, and I didn't realize it was you. And then I was like, oh, hey, this is really cool. I love this. Like, I love like the retro thing with the tapes and whatever. And then I said something at some point, and you were like, oh, sorry, it's me. I was like, oh my gosh, it's another Josh project. Like, it's funny because there are so many of those instances where, between all the collabs that are going on among people in the community, and then so many people have multiple projects. And if I didn't know that you were both, and Without the Sky and Under the Yggdrasil, I don't think I ever would have put those two together. Like if somebody says to me, "Oh, do you think that's the same guy?" I would have been like, "No, I don't think so." And I just think that it's fascinating to me about you that you are so unassuming. You're just like, yeah, but you're like, okay. now I think I'll do really kick-ass black metal over here, and then I'm going to take a little break from that for a while because I need to sleep, and I'm going to do this dungeon synth the way it should have been done in the first place album over here, and then, oh, I don't know, I'll start a record label, and like, for somebody who doesn't sleep very well, you do, as you said, have a lot of energy, I guess, but like, do you have other iterations of your creativity in mind? Or is there going to be like a, K-pop album by you in the future or something? Or do you feel like you're kind of sated with what you've got going on now?
I think I'm kind of where I want to be. There's been some talks with Jack from Greg Filth about some collaboration there.
Oh, cool.
I am actually playing drums for a band on the internet.
Okay.
So it's kind of a newer thing.
And you don't want to say what band yet, or?
I honestly don't even know how it's pronounced. I think it's Hana or Jana. I'm not really sure how exactly it's pronounced, but it's
how is it spelled?
Jhana.
Oh, Jana. Yeah, I think it's pronounced Jana. Oh, I didn't know you were playing drums.
Yeah, okay. It's like a really super recent thing. Like I just talked with their singer and guitarist. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now.
I know it's hard when you're being interviewed to call up all the facts. I totally understand.
But he just basically said that he was looking for musicians to try to finish the last, basically an incomplete album that never got released. So I've only done one track so far, but it's kind of we're all kind of just doing it like in our spare time. Everybody else has other projects too. So.
Sure. Oh, that's really good. How is it for you collaborating after so much time just, doing everything on your own? Is there freedom in that? Is it like, is it something obviously you're not going to be like, no, I hate it, but like, does it kind of goose you creatively a little bit too, and how different is this project specifically? Because I don't know whether it's in line with, Jonna's usual stuff or whatever. Like, is it kind of in line with what you usually, any version of what you usually do, since you usually do a couple of very different things? Or
so, like, as far as my drumming goes, it's kind of like simplistic, I guess.
Okay.
Like I can drum really fast, but nothing really complicated.
Well, so it's hard to do both, I think.
Yeah. The first band that I was in was like kind of a grunge metal,
right,
whatever band, and that's where I learned to play drums. So it's actually kind of just like going back to something I've already done.
Okay.
I really wanted to have some time to actually practice my drums, and I've been neglecting it. So I thought that would be a good way to do it.
Okay. So, and is it in a black metal vein? Is it more like a grunge thing? Is it completely? Okay.
Yeah, it's like what, it's all their other stuff. Like
okay, so it's not okay. So it's an unfinished project in their genre, not something totally far afield. Okay, I wasn't. Sometimes when people bring in collaborators for something like that, it's because they're trying on something totally new. But okay, that's very cool. So we will, I guess, keep an ear out for that in the not too distant future. You're a little bit of a man of mystery. You have all these little fingers and all these little pies all over the place, and some of it you're at liberty to talk about and some of it you're not. So now I'm going to come all the way back to this idea of how different you are. I'm wondering, given that you've got all these different kinds of projects going and you do have all these musical sides, what do you listen to besides black metal? Anything? Is it really all black metal just in your spare time when you're just, driving around or whatever, or just what influences, are you taking musically besides, if there are any, black metal?
So, black metal really doesn't make up a huge amount of what I listen to, really.
Okay.
Like it's probably maybe a quarter of what I listen to.
Okay.
As I've mentioned, like I really like punk and post-hardcore and shoegaze and ambient music.
Makes sense.
Not super into like country. There's some hip hop out there that I like, but not
Mm-hmm.
a lot. So I mean, I listen to a lot of stuff, grunge,
Mm.
everything.
So it sounds like a lot of the stuff that you like is sort of rhythmically driven, kind of heavy bass, heavy drums, or not even necessarily heavy, but just that low end is important there, and that the rhythm is, to me, hip hop, punk. There's always a lot going on with the drums, with the bass. So I imagine then, if that's, is there, like, do you have like a, because sometimes I ask this question and people will surprise the crap out of me. They'll be like, oh, and also Barbara Streisand, or oh, and also disco or whatever. Like, do you have any sort of weird outlier? Are you sitting there listening to Christina Aguilera or something? Or are you all pretty much, it's all pretty much pop and ambient and shoegaze and some black metal? Or do you have like a, I hate calling them guilty pleasures, because it's, who wants to put like a value judgment on pleasure, but like anything that would surprise me that you listen to besides what we've already talked about?
I don't know. I think maybe the like more surprising ones, or one of the more surprising ones, is when I start talking about Coheed and Cambria. They're like literally my favorite band.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I absolutely love them.
So
Obviously,
what turns you on
nothing.
about that? Yeah, nothing like what you. So what? Why does that light up your brain so much? I mean,
I don't,
obviously a lot of people like Coheed and Cambria, but like, why? Given that what you do is so different, like, how did that happen?
it's just so like lyrically intense
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. Like his delivery is very like popish, very like nice, but it's not really that nice.
Yeah, he's kind of slipping in. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I guess actually that makes sense, because you that the lyrical intensity is something that you can relate to from, Without the Sky and End too. So, but yeah, that is not something I would have necessarily thought. You see, I'm glad that I persisted with the question, because I didn't know if you were hiding something, but I thought maybe, and there we go. Now we've got the uh the secret out. So okay, so I'm just trying to keep myself organized here. So, Without the Sky and End, Under the Yggdrasil, Rotting Sun Records, I got a treat. I got a preview of, am I allowed to say the title?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I got a preview of Luna, which is coming out July 5th. 5th, yeah. I love this song. It's well, I don't know how much am I. Why don't you talk about it a little bit first, and where it's going to be, and then I can give you my take on it, because I was so excited to get kind of like a sneak peek there.
Like honestly, I kind of don't really even know how to feel about this particular song. Like I'm kind of experimenting with something different, I guess. Like
Mm. Hmm.
I think it's similar enough to the end stuff, but um I guess it's a lot like a little bit more atmospheric,
Hmm.
and I kind of tried changing up the vocals a little bit more. And
Yes, that was the first thing that I noticed, because especially even in the beginning, it's almost, even the vocals are kind of faded back a little bit
yeah,
more,
it's
and
actually it's a bunch of layers of me whispering the actual like chorus or the
yeah.
chorus.
Right. I know. It's funny. I'm in my head. I when I listen to things, I try to make notes about, like, oh, this part, this part. And I'm like, I'm never sure what to call it when it comes to this kind of stuff, because it's not really a standard song structure that you deal in. But you do have things that repeat, where we could kind of call it a chorus, or, at least a refrain
Yeah.
that you keep bringing back. So you don't know how to feel about it, in the sense that you're not sure if you like it, or just where it fits with your musical, situation? Or what do you mean by you're not sure how to feel about it?
It just I don't know, it didn't give me the same kind of like emotional reaction as Misery Eternal. And then maybe
Okay.
that's, for good reason. Like
Hmm.
uh what the song actually is a is a recreation, basically, or a reimagining of the very first song that I made, which was Despair.
Okay.
And I've always had
Okay.
kind of a weird relationship with that song as well. Like
Okay. How so?
um it's just a really simple song, and there's not a lot to it. There's also just a lot of like emotion behind it that I think that at this point in time I just don't care about that emotion anymore. It's
Mm,
over.
mm,
It's done.
mm.
And maybe that's kind of why I feel a little bit different about this song.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I have to think making an album like Misery Eternal, given the intensity of the vocals, the intensity of the lyrics, all the emotion behind it, everything you were processing, everything that you put into it, you've got to come away from putting that together changed. I mean, it. I know it. You said 6 weeks or whatever. It's quick, but I don't get the sense that you started processing it when you started the album. I get the sense that you kind of got to a bottleneck of emotion where you could put it into art and bring it outside of you. And so I think that's really interesting to me that you're reworking your first song, you're turning it into something that's a little more like where you are currently. Not that it's drastically different, but it's reworked, it's got more elements, and it's not resonating with you anymore. It's almost like seeing a picture of yourself from a long time ago that doesn't even look like you anymore. And I wonder if the reason that Luna is happening now is because Misery Eternal put you in a place where you could do that. You know what I'm saying? That like you, because I don't know if the emotional content is related at all, but I mean, if you did process a lot with Misery Eternal and you did come out of it feeling, relieved of some of that, or just at least that you had distanced from it a little bit or worked through it or whatever. Like it, I mean, where were I, mean, I don't know how personal you want to get, so feel free not to answer, but like what was the emotion in it that when you were originally writing with it that you don't care about anymore?
Um,
You really wanted mac and cheese or something, or no.
yeah, I just like absolutely intense anger at another human being.
Mm-hmm,
Just
mm-hmm.
yeah, and I guess I'm just not mad about it anymore.
Anymore. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it because it's I don't feel a ton of anger in Luna. Um, it's not that it's not heavy. I mean, it's as they say, a banger. Like I really like it a lot. But
It's kind of subdued in a way.
yeah, that's a really good word for it. Like it's heavy, but it's very in control of itself, and it seems cleaner to me emotionally. Like it's not something that's like I didn't come away from it feeling eviscerated like I did with Misery Eternal. That it was um it seemed more like something that you had dealt with than something that you were dealing with, if that makes any sense. So that fits with me what you're saying. So, I mean, that's a good thing to be past that kind of anger. I don't think anybody wants to live in that space for too long, although unfortunately I know a lot of people do. So I mean, why did you decide to come back and rework something that emotionally you were kind of finished with? Was it just because you wanted the song to sound different? Did what made you decide to rework Despair and turn it into Luna?
I think I've always like really liked the lyrics to this song because they're very like um, kind of mysterious in a way, and
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of create something similar to that.
Hmm.
I'm really, and it's kind of funny that you mentioned the like in control kind of thing because that is more like what I'm going for with these next songs by
Mm.
Without the Sky is trying to tone back that um, just absolute like furious craziness.
Yeah. No, no, you know what? It's landing. Like it is, because it almost feels like without the sky is end like grown up a little bit. And I don't mean that end was immature in any way. I don't mean that but it's sort of like it's like if end got really good therapy, you know, and that these are and I think that's part of what resonates with me so much about all of your music, right? Because you can be in different headspaces, you can be in different emotional places, you can be at different points in your life or just different parts of your life, and you can find that in each of your projects. It's kind of like um you've got a beginning, a middle, and not an end, but like a next step kind of feel to your music. And so, you know, if somebody's just sitting there and basically just wants to beat the shit out of somebody, they can go and listen to end, and they can channel all of that, you know, through your vocals and the lyrics and just the music and everything. And I mean, like one of the things that I like so much about Misery Eternal, for example, is like that you bring back a lot of the musical themes from the songs at the beginning and to come back, especially at the end, you know, where you're really but you're growing them, you know. They're not sometimes it's guitar, sometimes it's the bass, sometimes it's the way that the drums are being played at a certain point. And it's so like even from the beginning of the album to the end, there's a change, you know. It's not like it's done, it's not healed, it's not finished, but you're not static, you know, because I think I would have a hard time listening to, unless I was really in that headspace, something that was that intensely raw, that didn't move us forward at all emotionally, you know. And so I remember saying to you, I think when I was writing your review on Facebook, you know, that Comeback was like one of my favorites. And I think it's because it really does kind of bring it all back. I mean, like, you know, and I was listening to him, I'm kind of like, it's kind of like and I hope you don't mind, because I think it's a great band, like a little bit of a Paramore vibe almost, like in the instrumentation. And then like, you know, the way that you play with the speeds and the dynamics and everything. It's just, it really, it almost kind of sums up the whole album for me in that one song at the end. And so I think that and I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but your music really makes me feel and it makes me think, you know. And I am now getting to talk to you more and getting to know you better. It makes a lot of sense, because you are really putting yourself into everything that you're doing. I think even when you don't realize that that's what you're doing. And I wonder if, because you have spent so long in that raw headspace, if recognizing the parts of yourself that are calmer, less angry, less intense, less raw is a little bit like almost like a funhouse mirror for you. Like,
Yeah,
wait a minute,
it's a
what?
little bit weird looking at it. I guess it's hard to yeah, as things change sometimes it's weird to look back and see like how angry I was 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago, I was so angry I couldn't have made this album.
Yeah.
Then I went to, you know, making Misery Eternal and letting go of a lot of that, just years and years, honestly, of anger. And some of it was like during that time too, but most of it was things from the past. And
Yeah.
I really worked on that album to make it seem like it started one place and ended another place.
It did.
And
It did. Yeah.
a lot of that was because like at that time I was already knowing that what I wanted to do was to start trying to combine. And it's funny you say Paramore, because that's a post-hardcore band. I was trying to put elements more of like post-hardcore and shoegaze into my music, and that was kind of the first experimentation with like calming down the music.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is still, it's still got intensity, right? But it is, as we said, more controlled. You know, it's like a controlled explosion, you know, rather than something that just blows up. And I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. I was going to censor myself, but I'm proud of you because what you intended to do with the album, with Misery Eternal, I mean, you heard me. I said it before you said it. It does go from one place to the other. I don't feel like you just, and there is absolutely a need and a space and a place for just fuck, like this is what I'm grappling with, and I'm not getting anywhere with it, and I'm just processing it, and I'm just putting it out there. But I think the fact that you're moving us through that anger to a place that's, it's not, I would not say resolved at the end. I would not say come back is, the Wish Disney song or whatever at the end. I mean, but you do have the mindset has changed, and even the way that the vocals are raw, it's a different kind of raw, and the way that the lyrics are intense, it's a different kind of intense. And I think for you to say, okay, this is, I don't know a lot about the kind of music that you made on Misery Eternal, but even for somebody who's kind of, a naif to the genre and everything, that I'm hearing the influences that you want and what you're going for, and that, I'm seeing the growth in the album. Like I hope you are aware that it's really cool that you did that. It's not like I use this, metaphor. It's not like I speak the language of, black metal at all, really at all. I'm the kid going like, hi, I would like a pen or whatever. Like I only know how to say like, where is the library and whatever. But like it even to me as kind of a tourist in the genre, and somebody that doesn't know your background or your history, obviously, like you communicated that really well. And you did that in a way that, that landed, even though I wasn't at all in the headspace that you were when you put it together, but there's something primal about that album. There's something that is so, what's a really good word for it? There's something that's just so elemental about the emotion that you have in there, that I think that even if people who are completely unlike you, who have completely different life experiences from you, they're still going to be able to connect to that because you are just 100% open and vulnerable in that moment. And it's so cool that you're doing that, just screaming your head off, but it works, and so I love that the more I get into listening to like your music and the other, metal musicians specifically that I'm learning how much depth there is to this set of genres and the overarching genre, and that it is so much more thoughtful. It's not just a bunch of people, banging on pots and pans and Cookie Monster in a, in a vacuum cleaner or whatever, like I might have thought before. It's really, and I do notice that, let me get to an actual question here. A lot of the themes of it do seem to resonate with people who do struggle with mental health issues. And we talk about mental health a lot on this show. I think it's hugely important. Everybody struggles with it, whether they admit it or not. And so I love that you are so open about that, because it gives people who feel that way, that don't have the ability to turn it into art the way you do, a place to put that. I think that's really important. That wasn't a question.
No, that kind of does. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's some of the reason why I make this kind of music too. Is when I was younger, I didn't really have a lot of people around, so music was how I kind of saw the outside world, so to speak. And I never understood why I was so just angry all the time. And then I realized there's a bunch of people that are just as angry at me, at the world, as I am. And that kind of helped me, I guess, recognize that I'm not the only one that feels that way. And if I can give back to a genre that's helped me that much, I really want to.
Yeah. Oh no, I think you are. I really do. And I think that what's cool about it is that can work for someone, like I said, like me, where, I'm sort of stumbling around the dark with this genre, and I'm feeling what you're putting into it, knowing nothing about the background, and to me that's a complete success. Plus the album is just really friggin' good. Let's like let's not like, confuse people either, that you don't have to be, if you also just want to put on something and just, just friggin' just enjoy it for an hour or whatever, like, almost an hour, you could do that. You don't have to go, it's not therapy or whatever, it doesn't have to be. But I think it's so cool that you've managed to achieve what you wanted to, and you're doing it in all these different areas too. So I mean, what would you say in the immediate and then going forward a little bit, besides what we've talked about, is next for you? Are you mainly going to be focusing on Without the Sky for a while? Is that the plan?
Yeah, as far as, so I've got like, so Luna is the next single, and then I have 2 more after that, and then okay. I don't really know what I'm going to do after that, I guess.
Okay.
I do kind of eventually just want to build up singles instead of releasing albums, and then maybe later compile them into an album and release a tape or something. But I'll still be working on Under the Yggdrasil. I keep saying that I'm going to stop and work on black metal only, but every time I do that, I come up with another EP during that process. So
oh darn!
I just another kind of
30 minutes where you put out 4 EPs or whatever. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kind of just letting it be what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you. That fits for me, because you seem to discover yourself through your music a lot anyway. So I have the feeling you're just gonna make something and then go, oh, that's what I'm doing now. Which is that's very cool. And it's cool that it is. I mean, I'm very grateful that you connected the black metal to the dungeon synth for me, so that I can see that there's it's a cousin or a great grandson or whatever of the same genre. But I'm really interested to see what you come up with next, because it could be literally anything at this point, and it would work, because you can do whatever the hell you want. You just know you need to come up with a name that is distinctly Googleable, and then you don't have to worry about it. So maybe come up with a name for your next project, and then you'll figure out what it is. I don't know. I think we could do
got
that.
Got a couple names sitting around in case I have another project, but
okay.
But I don't know. I'm also trying to keep it to like just 2. I have a couple of buddies that have way too many projects, and they get lost in all of it after a while. So
that it's got to be hard to, I mean, even just not from a musical standpoint, but like, being in a place where, I have a band and I have a show and then I have another show, whatever. It's kind of like, sometimes I'm like, wait, where am I? What am I supposed to be doing here? So I can only imagine musically. I mean, it's one thing I know a lot of musicians will jump around on different songs for their project, but that's a different thing than going from, okay, now I'm over here for 5 minutes doing something Without the Sky, and then I'm coming over here to Under the Yggdrasil, and then I'm going to go do something for the label or whatever. I can imagine that would get a little much. So it also seems to me like you will do a project until you feel like you've said everything there is to say with it. And so I was originally kind of panicked when I saw you saying on Facebook, like, okay, well, I'm wrapping up End now. And I was like, no, but I didn't. And then you were like, no, but I'm morphing it into this other thing. And I was like, okay, that's good. But so, I mean, is there a genre that you've always wanted to try that I mean, are you just really completely open to whatever comes next?
I know this is goofy, but I have actually wanted to like do like a post-hardcore band or like a shoegaze band at some point in time, but I don't fully understand those forms of music like as well as I do metal. So like for the time being, I think it's just going to be me putting elements of that into there.
Gotcha. Sort of dipping your toe in and getting more familiar and comfortable. Okay.
So I mean, who knows? I might put out a punk album, or you never know.
Now I completely want you to do that. I really do. Like, I think that would be. You're just going to end up, and then at some point there's going to be like, the Pat Boone album or whatever. You're just going to come out with a lounge thing. Hey, but no, I feel like if you once you seem to connect with something, I know you're going to do something cool with it. So if that's even dancing around in there, don't shy away from it. I would love to see what you do with that, because again, even the elements of it that you pulled in for your existing stuff, they work, and I like that you're almost straddling a couple of different genres in that way, that you're trying to bring in more of that kind of Paramore vibe, and you're trying to expand the musical vocabulary. So I mean, who knows? Maybe you do that, and then you're like, okay, I did my halfway album and my halfway songs, and now I'm going to go and do the whole thing. I mean, that would require you to collaborate again, though, right? Or do you think you would just do the whole thing yourself, as usual, as you always do?
I don't know. Like, I'm definitely open for collaborations and stuff, but I don't know. I've always kind of found it easier to work alone for the most part, or with maybe like one other person. So
yeah. Well, and maybe as the music gets a little less personal for you, it'll be easier to work with other people, So we'll say, okay, I will stop begging you to do that album, but you're probably going to hear from me on Facebook at some point, like, did you try it? How are you thinking about it? I'll just, I'll haunt you in your dreams at night. I'll be like, Josh,
well, it took me like 10 years to put out my first black metal EP, so you might be waiting.
Yeah, but you're kind of making up for lost time, because from what I'm hearing, it went from 10 years to 6 weeks to 2 days over your last couple of projects. So like, you could take like 15 minutes and just put out a punk album. Like, what's it? It's no skin off your nose. Just, like, be in the shower, do the whole thing, and then you're done. And then if you don't like it, no skin off your, all right, fine, whatever, fine. So, okay. So before we wrap up, was there anything in your oeuvre of many projects that you wanted to cover that we didn't cover, or anything you wanted to say or announce? Or, I mean, we know we've got Luna coming out July 5th. That's going to be on all streaming, I assume. And do you have a sense for the other two songs, like when you're going to be releasing them? Or
probably roughly like 6 weeks from the time that Luna's released, I'll release the next one, and then the same with the other, because they're like they're instrumentally complete at this point in time. They're finished. They just don't have any vocals.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a good space, give people enough time to, because Luna, really, seriously, guys, when it comes out July 5th, we get it, because it kind of feels like the next phase of Josh. This is you're gonna, assuming you're all fans, and again, if you weren't before, now after this you are, you're gonna want to get on board with this part of it, because I think wherever you go next, it's gonna, based on Luna and what I'm hearing, I'm excited to see where you go. So, okay, for the last bit of every interview, we do this thing where I put you in the Vox seat. Don't panic. You're looking deeply skeptical, Josh. Okay, so this is just 5 questions that I ask everybody. And I think, given everything that we've discussed, this is going to seem like a piece of cake, but who knows? This may be the thing that freaks you out. I don't know. So if you had to, and I guess for you, we're going to have to do this per project, but you can do it however you want. If you had to sum up your music in 5 words or less, what would you say?
It's dark and moody.
Okay, that's 3. You got 2 more. Do you want any other words, or that's pretty much it? I guess that works for all of it, really. Dark and moody.
Pretty much it. Yeah.
Dark and moody. Okay. I would also add raw, intense, and emotional. Those are the. I'm gonna. Since you dropped those 3 words, I'm picking them up and I'm putting them in there. So, okay, dark and moody. We got you. All right. Okay. So, what is your favorite thing about being a musician?
I don't know. I mean, it seems to just be something that I kind of have to do, I guess. I guess my favorite thing about it is not having panic attacks all the time.
Yeah.
Because if I'm busy with music, I don't really have panic attacks. I don't have time to think about it.
Okay. So it's really it keeps your head occupied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely keeps me like normal.
That's a horrible, dirty word. Don't say normal. Yeah, but I know what you mean. It kind of levels you out, keeps you. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, no, we're not. Don't ever call yourself normal. It's a terrible
Normal
thing.
for me.
No, I. Okay, that's better. As long as it's still weird, then we're good. I don't truck with normal.
No, I know.
Even the
I'm
dog
weird.
was upset with you for saying that.
Yeah, my dog's out there
Don't say
having
normal.
a
Don't say
fit.
normal. Okay, so this is going to be interesting then. The flip side of that is your least favorite thing about being a musician, if you have one.
It's a lot of time, and you're never really paid back, I guess, in the way that you want to be. I don't know how to explain that. Like, it's,
Like in
I don't
terms of
know,
feedback or connection or
kind of some of that. Some of it's just the aspect that, you can never really truly make this your job. Like, that really kind of sucks.
it really
um,
does. Yeah, it really does.
at least in terms of, like, I think there are certain types of music that can do that, but the genre that I'm in, it's not realistic for me to think that I'm gonna
Right.
end up going
Yeah,
anywhere
you're
with this,
not
like, huge.
TikTok music, so yeah.
No.
Thank God. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's kind of
Yeah.
a love-hate thing. It
Mm.
is what it is, but I've chosen to do what I do because I like it.
Yeah. I'm glad that you have, for what it's worth.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so if you had to pick one album, just one, to listen to for the rest of your life, what would it be? Most
Um,
people hate this question so much. I've gotten really dirty looks for asking it.
yeah, that's a difficult one to
Hmm.
answer.
Did anything just pop into your mind, first of all, that you might not necessarily pick, or you're just going completely blank?
Black metal's kind of a minefield.
Okay.
um, uh, I guess if I was gonna say, any particular album, and this kind of maybe is like out of the norm for what I typically listen to, I would say, and I can't remember the name. It's the second album by the Dillinger Escape Plan. Is
Okay.
really good. Um,
Not
it's
even a
called
band I know.
it's called Miss Machine. They're a uh, kind of like a metalcore band, but they have a lot of aspects of math rock. It's like really, really intense, really complicated music. They even mix in like jazz and stuff. It's a really, really interesting band if you ever have the time to check them out.
Okay. No, I always, because almost no one has answered this question with an album that I knew. So I make lots of notes. So
The
what?
Dillinger Escape Plan.
The Dillinger Escape Plan. Okay. Okay. All right. No, I will definitely give that a listen. Given how you're describing it, it makes sense to me because it's a whole bunch of different things that don't necessarily seem like they should go together, but it works. And that's kind
Basically.
of that's kind of your jam. So okay, all right. See, you did it. You didn't think you would do it, but you did it. So okay, this is it, Josh. We're in for the last of it, and this is the most serious, intense, difficult, and deeply personal question. Are you ready? Your toilet paper roll. Does the paper go over the top, or does it come out from under the bottom? And give your reason why.
It goes over the top because that's what the patent says.
So you're a purist, okay? It's funny when I talked to Jamsteak, Dom was like, "I don't want to hear about this. That's how it's supposed to be." I was like, "You can't just throw the patent away. You got to sort of listen to it." But I will. Well, actually, no, I won't. I'm maybe in the last episode of the series, if we ever finish it, I will give my stance on the whole thing. But okay, so you're going strictly by the rules. You're a by the book over patent based toilet paper guy. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. That is probably the most straightforward thing about you, Josh, which I got to tell you, I know you were a little apprehensive about, sort of this whole thing, but I have so enjoyed talking to you. I think you are, I think the way that you make your music so personal and the way that you are allowing us windows into your process of just all the stuff that you brought with you from your past and that you've been working through, and that, where you are now, and even the uncertainty of where you're headed. I just think that's a gift, that's something that's really specific in a lot of ways to music. And I just, you've made a fan of me in a genre that I don't ordinarily listen to. And, I appreciate that. Anytime somebody can give me music um, that I connect with, that I didn't know, I'm always grateful. So I'm grateful to you for that. And I just, whether it's Without the Sky End, or it's Under the Yggdrasil, or it's your label, Rotting Sun Records, or whatever is coming next from you, because you're going to be a post-punk band, which we know, we've already committed to that. You've written it in blood, and so now I have the contract, and I can force you to know. But whatever it is, I'm going to be on the ride with you, because I just want to see what you and your brain and your heart do next. So thank you so much for spending time with me and chatting. And everybody, remember, okay, Luna's coming out July 5th. Then you got 6 weeks before you keep your eyes out for the next one, and just go listen to him in all his forms. Do yourself a favor, because I think you're really going to find a lot to enjoy in Josh and his music. So thank you so much again, Josh.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, guys, that's Vox and Guest. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks for sticking around, guys, because you're in for a treat. It was just released yesterday, and we're about to play you Luna from Without the Sky. Enjoy.